Hello, I'm Bob Croskery, Pastor Emeritus of Pilgrim Chapel, and that followed after 15 years as your pastor. I'm so glad to be with you today and to share with you a few thoughts to help us live our lives better. During the Second World War, President Franklin Roosevelt spoke to the American people in what he called fireside chats. Well, we don't have any fireside here, but we're having a fireside chat. I wanted to ask you this question, a question that's often in my mind. Why are we Christians? Why do we go to Pilgrim Chapel? I believe there are some fundamental reasons why we need to be Christians and why Christians change our lives, why Christianity makes the world better. We congregate around the man who was the most extraordinary person in all human history. And now there are something like 2 billion of us who follow him and try to do and behave as he indicated we should do. And part of that is to have a numinous or spiritual experience whereby we feel the love and power of God in our own souls, working toward making us the better people that we ought to be, giving us confidence and faith and sweetness toward others and mercy toward those who need it and generosity to the poor. A few years ago, my daughter Beverly, my daughter Katie and I, Kate Croskery Jones, who is a Methodist district superintendent in Wisconsin, she and I went to a conference in Poland on pastoral care and counseling. It was near Wrocław, which is near the death camp Auschwitz in the Second World War. While we were there, a visit was taken for some who wanted to go to Auschwitz and see it. But it reminded me of Viktor Frankl, who was one of the 3 founders of psychiatry in the world, along with Freud and Adler. But Frankl's theories are very different from theirs. Their theories tend to be selfish and negative. Frankl's theory is that man's basic hunger is for meaning. He himself survived Auschwitz and Dachau. You cannot believe the privation and cruelty visited upon him and the other prisoners in those places. He came to the United States in 1964. I had the privilege of meeting him. Our church and another church sponsored a lecture by him at the University of Wichita. We met in the university auditorium. The place was filled and overflowing. The people were, including the psychologists, all the professors of psychology were in the front row. Most of them were atheists. I met Frankl's plane, took him to dinner, and then took him to the university and introduced him to the crowd and sat on the stage with him. He then began to speak to them about logotherapy, his theory of humankind, and that the primary driver in us is meaning, a search for meaning. He even wrote a book entitled Man's Search for Meaning, and another one From Death Camp to Existentialism, and many other books. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the New York Times had a big ad touting the republication of 2 of his books by Beacon Press. At any rate, he had discovered in Auschwitz that being selfish was not what it was all about. What he needed to do was to invest what little he could with other people, and often he got nothing to eat during the day, or if he did, it was 1 biscuit, and he would share that sometimes with others and encourage them to share with one another so that those who were the closest to death got the most food. But somehow he managed to make it through all of that. And as he gave his lecture telling about all these things, and I'm seeing these atheists in the front row squirming, I'm saying under my breath, pour it on, Victor, pour it on, because they needed to hear the enlightening gospel. We follow Jesus, who taught us to be merciful, who taught us to forgive those who are cruel to us, who taught us to seek peace and not quarrelsomeness and fighting, who taught us not to seek vengeance and revenge, but to turn the other cheek and do good things to people who abuse us in some way or other. And it seemed to me that that living example of Jesus in the very heart of the meanest, most horrible, most degrading thing in our time, our lifetime, the Nazi death camp, is inspiring. We can do it. We can be it. And I invite you today to make a new resolve that I'm making each day for myself, that I'm going to open my life and my mind to the love of God. I'm going to push all the unforgiveness out, all the lust for vengeance, all the being wounded by others. Put it out. It's not worth thinking about. And to spend my time assembling with people like the pilgrims of Pilgrim Chapel, where we can encourage one another, where we can enjoy the love of God, where we can equip ourselves for the work that we need to be doing today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. So on this particular day, it has been such a joy to be with you by this form of communication and to wish you only good things for today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. God help us all. Amen.